the South, welcome to camp. Hey, my name's Jack Schott, and I'm so happy to be with... Okay, well, I wish we were together. It's a little bit cold already in upstate New York, and I wish I was down in Tennessee with all y'all. But we're gonna have a great time over the next 3 days. We're gonna talk about all kinds of things having to do with how to run our camps better in this wild new world that we live in. This summer was the strangest summer that I could imagine. For us in New York, we weren't able to run any sleepaway camps. I know that many of you ran day camps. Some of you may have even had the chance to run some overnight camp. Some of you may have switched to virtual camps. That's what we did, and it's been wild. I don't know what the future is gonna look like. I don't think anyone does, but what we can do, and what I think we have the opportunity to do, is be the best groups and organizations on the planet for helping kids through this wild time. And that's gonna come in a million different ways and in a million different opportunities for each and every one of us. I hope that we can share some of the things that we're doing and that we've learned, and I hope all of you throughout the next 3 days get a chance to share with each other, build some community, and find some ways to keep making camp the best place to build and scale trust for kids throughout the rest of our time together. What we're gonna talk about over the next little bit is how radical empathy is the business model for summer camps moving forward. Now, usually when you hear the word empathy, it's like, oh, let's give each other hugs, or let's like feel for each other. And I believe that. And I think that camps, our goal is to build community and to make an impact for the kids that come and spend time with us, whether it's for the day, the week, or for the summer. And that's what we do best. We're some of the best organizations in the world at building these little communities. And I think the best thing we can do moving forward is to lean into what we're best at, building community, understanding the kids and families that we serve, and make that a little bit bigger, take that a little bit further, and understand how that impacts our bottom line and can make us successful, not by being something that we aren't, but by being more of what we are for the kids that we want to serve and that we want to have coming through our doors or onto our parks or into our properties. So that's what we're going to do. But first, who the heck am I? I'm going to turn it over to my friend Ray to tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from and what I do. Ray?
In 2012, Jack and Laura set out on a wild adventure with no idea where it would lead. They packed up Laura's beat-up old Honda Civic and hit the road, and the following 3 years built the foundation for what would become Stomping Ground. Full of passion, overly confident, and yearning for understanding, Jack and Laura visited over 200 camps, 47 states, and ate countless peanut butter and jellies. They learned from the best minds in camp, devoured new ideas, and constantly discovered new edges for what was possible. And in 2015, the real adventure began. 64 campers joined us for our first summer, and Jack and Laura will tell you it was a disaster. But I was there, and it was awesome. We tried disruptive ideas, treated kids the way they wanted to be treated, and made plenty of mistakes. But that ability to lean into mistakes with young people is what makes Stomping Ground the center for innovation it is today. Jack and Laura always say, kids learn how to make decisions by making them, not by following directions. They're right about kids, and they're right about us at camp. Each decision we make helps us discover more about Stomping Ground, our community, and who we are. And that summer in 2015, we discovered radical empathy. We discovered the real opportunity we all have to reimagine a more perfect world at camp and inspire the next generation to go out and build it. Today we have a new opportunity to build equity into the very fabric of our organization. But we need your help. We need your help to purchase and renovate a camp property. And we are in a moment where you will define the future for Stomping Ground and the thousands of kids that could walk through our doors. Those kids, like all kids, have struggles, problems, hopes, dreams, and goals. And what they need is a chance to be inspired and develop real friendships across difference. Imagine this world you can help create. A world where kids, instead of only knowing people mostly like them, are deeply connected to a community as diverse as you can envision. Think about the world we could live in. A world where kids grow up seeing the impact of their choices and developing the skills to work through their conflicts restoratively. That is the world we need you to help create. And let's take it one step further. In so many spaces, privilege begets privilege. A child's network defines so much of their opportunity. We can do better. They deserve better. And the best part is that it's fun. Camp is the best place to build and scale trust, and camp is undeniably fun. When kids play basketball, hunt for newts, and explore enchanted forests with kids that are different from them, they build lifelong networks that can lift each other out of poverty, change perspectives, and build a bond that transcends economics, race, and fear. You have a chance to make this world possible. You have a chance to give these kids a place to explore together, play together, and forge the bonds that will change the very fabric of their lives. This campaign is about so much more than the facility or the construction. It is about taking a stand for equity, the power of play, and human creativity. It is an act of hope in what is possible and an act of trust that young people, when given the chance, can build a radically empathetic world. Building that world starts with you. Help us inspire the next generation of radically empathetic decision makers. Help give them a stomping ground.
So in March, we bought a camp. As you can imagine, it's been a pretty wild ride since. I imagine you've had some pretty strange summers as well. I hope that we get to talk a little bit more about it as we go forward. But in March, we had this property and we got to work, and then in May, we canceled in-person programming for this summer. We went on to run some virtual programming, and we can talk more about that as well. But what we really found is that we don't really know what our families are experiencing right now. We have some insight based on our own lives, based on some of the people that we know well, but the first thing that we felt like we had to do was figure out what the heck is going on for the people that we're serving in this wild climate, in this tense political environment, in this kind of very unprecedented, or all the words that the people on the news say about this pandemic. Like, what is happening? How do we as a camp figure out how to be useful and to keep our doors open financially through this weird time? And we lean into what we love the most, which is to talk about radical empathy and how can we get to know those folks so that we can better serve them.
Radical empathy is actively striving to better understand and share feelings of others, to fundamentally change our perspectives from judgmental to accepting, in an attempt to more authentically understand ourselves and others.
Thanks, Clee. Clee's our camp director. She's also filming this. Okay, so the thing that Clee said that's really important, I think, is actively striving. Active. That's the part that's hard right now, because right now it's easy for all of us to kind of like try and protect ourselves, to bring our elbows in and try and stay in our lane, because we don't know what's happening. It's really hard. The world is changing more right now than any time in my lifetime, and I guess that's not that long, but it's long enough for me. So what can we do? How can we as camps better serve our mission by actively striving to understand what other folks are doing? Because I think, and it's worked for us so far, that what we can do is reach out to folks, understand what they're doing, what they're going through, what's hard, what are their pain points, what are they excited about, so that we can do more to help them get through this pandemic. We can serve them in ways that are different from the ways that we've served them in the past, and hold core to what we're best at. And what I think about what we're best at, and you might be good at a lot of different things, what we're best at is building community and finding ways to connect with folks across difference, right? So you might be really great at teaching kids coding or riding bikes or connecting with nature. So if that's what you're awesome at, how do we understand what the world of the people that we serve and want to serve are doing right now, and then do what we're best at and bring that to them? We used to do that in a very simple way, by bringing them to camp, whether that was bringing them to the park and running day camp, bringing them to your location, having them stay for the whole summer, whatever it was. That's what we used to do. We used to kind of understand what they were going through because the world was relatively static, and then we brought them to our locations to do our awesome programming, and that's how we accomplished our mission, right? But there's this thing in the middle. That's what we may need to change right now, just to be able to do better at serving our families and to make it so that when we do get to go back to our properties, whether that's in 2021 or 2022 or who knows when, we can be ready to serve folks the best. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I realized during this video, I haven't told you this yet, but you're awesome, okay? It's been a weird year, and you're trying your best, and it's really hard, and you're awesome. And you're the right person to be making the impact that you're gonna make this year. You are awesome. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Sorry for the mess, we're painting our 9-year-old. It's amazing how fast you can do that. So it really starts with understanding our people, right? Our people, let's talk about them from the 3 Ps. Boom, Clee, where are you putting it? Right there, right there, right there, right there? I don't know, the 3 Ps, our people. Our parents and their kids, our partners, and our personnel. So what is happening in the lives of our parents, our partners, and our personnel? I use personnel, but I would call them staff, but the 3 Ps sound better. So we got our 3 Ps. How do we get to know them better? Let's dig into it. Our goals for our 3 Ps is how do I get to know them better? How do I build more trust? And then how do I help in a new way or help them see a way we already are doing our programming that might be useful to them? So that's how do I get to know them better? How do I build trust? And how do I then at the end help? Because you don't show up to a dinner party and say, hey, look at me, I can help you. No, you show up to a dinner party, you say, hey, how's everybody doing? You ask questions. And as Dale Carnegie says, it's much better to be interested than interested. So I've got 2 quick tips on how you can get to know your community better. All right, we're gonna start with the fact that I think surveys are dead. Sort of, we just did a big one, but you get the idea, they're kind of dead. I'll talk about it in a minute. And second, how do we get to know our schools more effectively?
All right, so Jack's exaggerating a bit on the whole surveys are dead thing. We just did a huge one, like he said. We got a good amount of responses, and we found that those micro communications, where I, as the camp director, am reaching out one-on-one to folks, gets us a lot more insight on what people are going through. This means defining what parents want to text, what parents want to chat on the phone, and which parents want to email. After chatting with these people, it's then my job to record all of the information and meet as a team and figure out which of their needs we can meet as a camp. Also, sorry about all the noise. We have a cabin build going on.
So Clee mentioned those micro interactions. Here's what I would do. Make a list of every camper that was registered for 2020 and figure out the best way to do some kind of a conversation with them. Some of those parents are gonna wanna text, some of those parents are gonna wanna email, some of those parents are gonna wanna call. And just start by filling that in. Over time, you might get everybody, but start. Starting is much more important than putting it off for it to be perfect. Tip number 2, how do we get to know what's happening for our kids every day? When's the last time you were in their school? What do you know about their school life? Are they doing virtual schooling right now? Are they in person but with masks? Are they in small schools that don't have masks? What's happening for kids every day? How do the parents drop them off? What are the challenges there? How do we get to know the space that kids are spending the most amount of their time in? We know that the huge majority of our kids go to some form of school, or they used to. So how do we get to know what the parents have already opted into for their kids? Where's their overlap between our camp and what the schools care about, what the parents are seeing every day, what their kids are doing every day? The real key here is how do we better understand the kids' school experience? So here's what we did. What schools do we serve the most? Here's what we did. Clee sat at her computer and had a spreadsheet open of every kid that came to camp in 2019 and was registered to come to camp in 2020. Then in our spreadsheet, we made a list of what schools do they attend. Our camp serves kids from the greater New York City area, all of upstate New York, in Philadelphia. We have a pretty wide range of where kids come from. You might only have kids from a handful of schools, right? But we have kids that come from all over. And what we've noticed is they come from all over, but they tend to attend a lot of similar schools. So then we made a list and we put it up on here with the names of the kids next to them or the number of kids coming from that school. We didn't know where every kid went to school, but we could make some educated guesses about the huge majority of our campers. Awesome. So we've got kids coming from public schools, from charter schools, from alternative schools, from relatively conventional private schools. We got kids coming from different things that parents have opted into. So now what's happening at each one of these schools? Are the kids having a hybrid model where they can either go to school or stay home? Are they going to school? What do we know about these different schools? What do they care about? Green Street Friends, we have a bunch of kids that come from a Quaker school in Philly. What do they already care about? And how can we then start to talk to these schools with a warm introduction from one of the parents on how we might be able to start to be useful? But if we just call up these schools and cold call and say, hey, like we do this thing and blah, 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 most of the schools are busy and they're not gonna have time for us. But if we arrive and we say, hey, we know you're doing virtual programming for your kids, and one of the things that we're great at is connecting kids with nature, we'd love to do some science programming for your third graders around how the water system works. And we're gonna do it from camp, and we have, our camp director is an environmental educator, and they're gonna be able to make it possible for your kids to learn more effectively because of what we have to offer. So remember, the goal here is to get to know our partners better, get to know our parents and our schools better, to then start to build trust with them so that then we can start to offer help for that. Now, the business model here might be that we get paid to do some education, but more importantly, it's about building these relationships with the families so that we can then either get them to sign up for our programs later, which lets us make more impact and generate more revenue, or to develop new programs that we can then offer to the families and to the parents and to the schools that we then know that because we know them well enough to know what their problems are. Okay, so we're talking about building a radically empathetic business model around understanding and having two-way communication with our parents, our partners, and our personnel, so that then we can, as we understand them, build the programming that will be best for them, or let them see the programming that we already have. That's awesome. Okay, like we said, 2020 has been wild. We don't know what's gonna happen in 2021. And here's the thing. When I think about it, we ran virtual camp this summer, and don't tell anyone, but it wasn't as good as in-person programming. It's not. Okay, if you ran in-person programming and you had to adjust your schedule and adjust everything and kids were in masks and in different pods, my guess is you looked out and you thought, this is not as good as I want it to be. And I hear that. And for our kids that come to camp, this was probably the hardest summer of their lives. They were stuck in their houses more often than not. They were not at school. They were kind of everything in their lives got shifted and turned upside down, just like everything in your life. And what you offered this summer, whether it was just an email to your families showing support, whether it was being able to find some in-person programming or virtual programming, and what you're gonna offer next summer are gonna be the two most important summers of these kids' lives for a long time. And that's because the world is plenty messed up, and we get to be this beacon of hope and support to these families. And it's gonna be different for each and every one of us. There's gonna be a brainstorm later, I'm sure. There's gonna be a whole bunch of ideas on whether you can run family camp, whether you can run a slightly different day camp, whether you can run day camp but you were a sleepaway camp, all those things, it's okay. You're gonna figure out the best way to make the most impact for your community, and you're gonna do that by getting really close to them, by finding new ways to communicate with them, and not communicate with them like sending them emails and broadcasting, this is what we're doing, but communicating with them like you communicate with your friends, having a two-way conversation, finding ways to be radically empathetic in the way that you're doing business so that your camp can meet its mission. You're the best people in the world to do this. Camp is the best, I firmly believe. Summer camps are the best place on the planet to build and scale trust. And the world needs more trust today, now more than ever. And you're the right person to do that. Let's have an awesome conference.